percolator.
His latest book is entitled Ogilvy on Advertising.
Damn right. We sell or else.
Shop carefully.
I know.
Don't leave home without them.
Now let's talk about big ideas. Are you having any fun?
It's far too nostalgic. What do you think? It's pretty.
Who's that guy? Is that me?
Well, Devika, that's a wonderful introduction to Ogilvy. But first, let me welcome you again.
Thank you very
to
much.
Northeastern.
Thank
I
you,
know you've
Ravi.
come down from New York just to be here for this. You have something on your like little
I
bug.
know I just have a very sexy voice.
Okay, I like the way you spin that. That's part of advertising. You
Exactly.
Need to know how to spin things. Tell me, this video makes it appear like you're just an advertising firm, but you actually do a lot more. So tell us a little bit about what Ogilvy does.
So we are the largest agency in terms of the global footprint. We're in over I'd say 50 markets and 90 offices. We do advertising, but advertising it's not a 30-second ad anymore. Anything you see on your phones, any TikTok video that you see from a brand, or even if it's not from a brand, we do PR, we do social influencer marketing. We have a small consulting business, and we basically specialize in every sector that you can imagine. As I was telling you earlier, I think if I look at the top 20 companies in the world globally, I've never worked with Walmart, but otherwise pick a big giant, and I've probably worked with them. But I think one of the critical points right now is when the word advertising for some reason makes everybody feel like you're talking about a TV ad. Mm-hmm. That is not what, there's actually very little of that. Mm. And there's a lot more of content today because of the way we're consuming everything, right? We consume everything on our phones. Mm-hmm. And there's so many platforms on which we consume, and each platform from a technology perspective is different. You have to create for it differently. Consumers engage with it differently. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, very complex ecosystem of what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to come to that in just a second, but you introduce Ogilvy. Can you introduce Devika too for us?
Devika, I'm from India. I grew up, I was born, raised in India in a small town, actually born in Amritsar, and then went to boarding school in India. I've lived here in New York for 30 years now and just been in this industry. But I always say one of the things that, people often ask me about like being a woman leader, and I always say, no, actually I'm an Indian woman leader. And I really try to make sure that the way leadership is evolving, that my gender and my ethnicity is an integral part of it. That's very important to me. I was born in a very, very conservative Indian family, which I'm sure a bunch of you in the room may be able to identify with. And I always say, since I was a little girl, I knew I wanted to live in the US, and one of the reasons I wanted to live here is because I said, I want to go to bed tired. I don't know what I was thinking. I mean, it was clearly crazy when you were little. But I have two older brothers, a very patriarchal family. And I think I was 5 or 6 years old, and it was a joint family system, which is not uncommon in India at all. And I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I remember running out to the guard in the front yard and saying, I did it, I did it, I did it, I did it. And everybody was like, what did you do? I said, I figured it out. I can pee standing up. And my entire family, all my aunts and uncles were looking at me going, what is she saying? And really what I was saying is I didn't understand why my brothers could do everything and I couldn't. And in my simple mind at that point, I just thought that if I can learn that one skill, maybe I can do everything a boy can do.
I was going to get to this later, but we're already in. So I want to continue to explore what your thoughts on this. You've said somewhere, I think, that men fail forward, but women fail backwards. What did you mean by that?
You know, when a man is failing and you have a conversation, the conversation typically is, what a risk taker, right? He was swinging for the fences, so it didn't work out, but ambitious. There's all this very positive energy towards failure. In sort of, when you look at it through the lens of the way men do it, and when a woman fails, it's like, yeah, she really didn't have the skills. We promoted her too early. We should have waited. And unfortunately, in my 30-year career in the US, I saw that in the beginning, and I see it today. That paradigm or that mindset hasn't shifted. And we need to be more aggressive because all the data will say when it comes to gender or even race, we're not actually making the level of progress that we need to.
Mm-hmm. So what explains your rapid progress up the ladder?
My son said to me the other day, he said, he said he was talking to one of his friends and they said, oh my God, your mom really knows what she wants to do. And my son said, no, she has no idea what she wants to do. All she knows is what the task is right in front of her. And I think I just had this sort of mentality to say, I still have it. You have a sense in your head. You have to. I can't run a company without having no sense in my head. And I always tell people to say, liberate yourselves. And especially from a younger generation perspective, liberate yourselves from the pressure of trying to figure out, how am I going to get successful? How am I going to reach X, Y, and Z? Do what's next and do it really well. Because often we get paralyzed to do what's just in front of us and do it really well because we're so busy thinking about how to get to this state that we all want. And that's always been my mindset, is to say I'm very actually task-oriented. It's like, this is ahead of us right now. And how are we going to do what's ahead of us, and how are we going to do it incredibly well? We don't have fancy vision mission. I don't do that. Very simple vision mission, and it says, and I always tell everybody, advertising, our business, in any business, frankly, debate is important, tension's important. Innovation ideas don't happen because I do not like the word collaboration. I think it leads to mediocrity. Every idea is actually not a good idea. That's just the truth, but we've made it into this thing. Our vision mission is, I always say, we will discuss and debate everything because it's very important for business. It's very important for innovation, but there are two things not up for debate, which is the pursuit of greatness and doing it with goodness. That's our vision, that's our mission. I have no idea what greatness means.
But you can recognize it when you see it.
And also it's inspiring to a person as opposed to me saying, we're going to have 6 steps to our, I'm sorry, I'm sure you all have vision, mission. I feel like but I need 15,000 people who work at this company, and I need the imagination to fly, which doesn't happen with process. It actually happens with inspiration.
Did you have to perform even better than other people?
Oh, I still do.
Okay.
I still do. There's absolutely no question about it.
Say more. What do you mean?
I look at my cohort, and the men are still getting away in being ineffective for a lot longer than a woman is. I'm just held to different standards. There's absolutely no question about that. I'm still fighting for pay parity myself. And that's okay. This stuff, we're talking about thousands of years of an ingrained issue. It is not going to turn around tomorrow.
You've said that several men helped you with your career. Speak to that.
I've been extremely fortunate because the people who gave me a seat at the table have always actually been men. There was Harris Diamond, one of my old bosses. He saw me in a meeting. I used to be a strategist in our industry. And the strategy path would never lead me to be a CEO. He came in, he was new, he came in, he called me into his office the next day and he said, what do you want to do with your life? He's like a very sort of big personality from Brooklyn. And I said, what do I want to do with my life? That is sort of a weird existential question from somebody I don't really know. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, you shouldn't be a strategist, you should run something. So I looked at him and I said, okay, what? And he said, I don't know. So I said, okay, so now what? He said, nothing, go back, keep doing what you're doing, we'll figure it out. And then he just systematically made me run different things. And then ultimately the person who gave me the biggest seat at the table is Mark Reed, who is the CEO of the WPP. The way advertising works is there's many agencies and there's a holding company, which is the street-facing entity. But who taught me leadership was a woman.
Who was that?
I actually call her my tormentor, not my mentor. But her name is Nina DeSessa. And she was a trailblazer. I mean, there's more women right now in our industry than when she was doing it. And I watched her always, and she never, ever, you role model behavior, right? So if you see a man leading, you tend to lead like a man, but she never did that. So I actually could watch somebody to say, men can lead in a certain way, but we as women can lead in a different way. And that's okay. I don't have to emulate. I've already tried to emulate male behavior when I was 5, so I needed a different role model myself.
I'm sure there'll be many questions from the audience on some of these topics. We will have time for Q&A, so please get your questions ready when we open it up. I want to get back to the business.
Absolutely.
Because the media industry has evolved over the years. And I know that it was at one time all print and then became radio, or print, then radio, then TV, and now social media and influencers. Tell us how it's changing, how that mix is changing, and where do you think it might be in 5 years or 10 years?
So I would say 100% of our clients, their media mix has changed, and it's over 50% of it is digital media. So when you talk about, it's just anything that you're doing online, right? As opposed to linear TV, which is the old world. Print is sort of a dying medium. I don't know, does anybody actually open a newspaper on a Sunday morning?
Even I don't. So
Even
I'm from the generation where you go out and look for the newspaper first thing in the morning, but it's all over.
I still by habit have it delivered.
Okay.
And then I pick it up from the door and I go put it in the trash. That's the extent of my... so print is sort of a dying medium. Radio has changed. Everything has changed from being linear to being more programmatic is what we call it, right? So it's delivered to you when you need it, when you want it, based on data, based on targeting. So video hasn't changed. So I keep saying, while we can talk about media fragmentation and technology, so the influence of technology in how we do work, in how we distribute work, in how all of you actually receive that information, what has not changed is human motivations. So you're not watching TV necessarily, but we're consuming more video content than we ever were. Right? Who's addicted to TikTok? Me too, by the way. Amazing, right? Like, I mean, can you go to bed without TikTok? You can't. So we're consuming video content, we're just doing it differently. And that has had a massive impact on our business, massive. In terms of, and by the way, and now there's AI, and we can have a whole session talking about sort of the implications of AI. But it's also, how do we adapt at the speed of technology? How do you create meaningful content at the speed of technology? 95% of what is created is ignored by all of you sitting in this room. 95%. And we have a very interesting, for 20 years we've been doing this study called Brand Asset Valuator that tracks companies and brands. And I joke with our clients to say, I don't actually have to run the study. I can just tell you what the results are for you. And the result is lack of differentiation and heightened commoditization. So what media fragmentation has done, because we're putting out so much content, the quantity is becoming more important, that we're creating less differentiation for companies and brands, and therefore much more of a commoditized world. So all of a sudden, from the brand and the company being in control, consumers are in control today.
Yeah, so given that, it's really amazing when you get something that goes viral.
Yeah.
And I know you had this campaign with Shah Rukh Khan that went viral. So let me show you that clip. It's about a minute long. Jamie, can you roll?
Big brands have big money to hire famous people, but not the small guys. And they are the ones who are still hurting. Presenting Shah Rukh Khan, My Ad.
He almost certainly has more devoted fans than any other movie star in the world.
Biggest movie star in the world.
Forbes have called him one of the biggest movie stars in the world.
We helped small businesses by making Shah Rukh Khan, the world's biggest movie star, their brand ambassador.
इस दिवाली आप भी ना अपने पास वाले फैशन और एम्पोरियम से ही कपड़ों की शॉपिंग करना। सिद्धि विनायक इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स से लेटेस्ट स्मार्टफोन खरीदकर धमाकेदार सेल्फी पोस्ट करना।
क्या कर रहे हो? मीठा लाए कि नहीं?
We used machine learning to recreate Shah Rukh Khan's face and voice to take the local store names in the ads.
आप भी ना अपने पास वाली चॉइस ऑफ फैशन से ही कपड़ों की शॉपिंग करना। रॉयल फैशन से ही, MK क्लॉथ्स से ही, पास वाली लक्ष्मी कलेक्शन से ही कपड़ों की शॉपिंग।
Different versions of the same ad with local store names were targeted as per the PIN code of the viewer, showing them only the nearby stores. But it is impossible to cover all the stores. So we gave the power to the people to create their own version of Shah Rukh Khan, My Ad. Any small business owner could promote their stores through their own social media networks like WhatsApp forwards and other social media pages.
It is Shah Rukh Khan selling your store, man. If you're a small-time retailer or a merchant, what an amazing thing to have.
Cadbury ad is an ad campaign that has gone viral.
A new ad which stars Bollywood superstar Shah Rukh Khan is winning hearts all over social media.
And what we are learning is that over 1 lakh local stores have already created their own ad with Shah Rukh as a brand ambassador.
दुकानों के नाम बड़ी सेलिब्रेशंस के दिवाली एड में शामिल हैं।
सपने में भी नहीं सोचा था कि शाहरुख खान मेरे दुकान का ऐड करेगा।
Shah Rukh Khan, My Ad.
Okay, that's cool, isn't it? So anybody can go in and just put their name of their store and it will appear as if he's doing an ad for them. He's okay with that?
Yeah.
Cadbury's is okay with that?
Absolutely. Cadbury's entire brand platform or their mission is generosity. So they do this every Diwali in India, which, by the way, is tomorrow.
Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali. So they're absolutely okay with it. But if you look at that, was it an ad? Yes, it was. Did it use really cutting-edge technology? Yes. Did it use data targeting in a new way? Yes. Was it on social media? Yes. Was it one ad? No. So this is the kind of work that is happening in our industry right now. I don't know if any of you, I'm just trying to think of like what might be relevant to you because that's an example from India. But the Super Bowl, right? Do you watch ads in the Super Bowl? Please tell me you do. It'll really break my heart if you say no. It's still the one sort of, guaranteed 125 million eyeballs in this country. Did anybody see the Michael Cera conspiracy theory? So we just did something with Michael Cera for CeraVe, which is another, and this was viral in India. That has become a global sensation. Where we just, with influencers and on social media, we created a conspiracy theory that CeraVe was actually owned by Michael Cera. Because we found on a Reddit thread that people were saying, does Michael Cera have anything to do with CeraVe? So we created this massive conspiracy during the Super Bowl that went really viral. Now, these are examples of using video assets and social media, but there's another way of going viral, which actually I did with one of my old clients here from Boston with State Street Global Advisors. Any of you familiar with the Fearless Girl downtown? She's a little girl, bronze girl. She faces the charging bull.
I see a lot of nodding heads.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's it's one of the most famous, I don't know what to call it. It's a statue. It's not really advertising. And she's still there facing the stock exchange. So that went more viral than any of this did, but it's a bronze statue. So, but that's modern advertising, right? I can't really put it in a box. And I always say advertising today is about using bronze to innovate. Or in Colombia, we took, there's no clean water. So what we did in Colombia is we take a bottle, it has a cap. And we created a bottle cap that became a filter. So you put 2 bottles and you take dirty water and you turn it around. And it's a filter cap. So is that advertising? So we are really at this sort of intersection of what is a business problem and how can we use creativity to solve a certain business problem.
Yeah, and I saw that your video, the initial video, had reference to borderless creativity.
We use 2 words, borderless and impact, by the way.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that? How do you actually make that work? And I was going to ask you, you have clients like Coke, which I think of as a global brand, but I believe they have like 5 subcategories and they operate with 200 separate brands in like 200 countries. How do you serve a client with such diversity with a central advertising agency or a marketing agency?
The first thing you do is just make a deal with yourself that you're going to gray a lot faster. The way, Coke is a global company, and one of the reasons that they work with us is our global footprint. Because if you go to Kenya, to a local village, the local shopkeeper there will have Coca-Cola. So brands like that are looking for partners where our reach is as extensive with feet on the ground, because it's really important for us to be able to understand how Coca-Cola globally should look, feel the same. If I go to India, I need to have the same feeling I get from a Coke piece of communication that I do sitting in Boston, right? So it has to have that global consistency, but then it has to have the local relevance, because human beings don't live globally. Yeah. They actually live in a community, they live in a local market, have local nuance, have cultural nuance, right? So it's not an easy thing to do. Dove is another amazing example for us of where we've taken a global brand. And I don't know, any of you familiar with some of the content that Dove has put out with the campaign for real beauty, that women don't actually, there's an authenticity to it. In India, we execute that very differently, because Indian beauty norms are different to Western beauty norms, are different to Brazilian beauty norms or Chinese beauty norms. But it is always about the same thing, which is taking the local beauty norms and disrupting those norms to say that is not the way, that is not what beauty is, that real beauty actually is defined in a more authentic way. So that's how we tend to do global and local. By the way, I make it sound, I'm thinking as I'm talking, I was like, it sounds so perfect. It's not.
Yeah, it sounds easy too.
It sounds easy, but it's absolutely not easy to do it.
Because somebody has to look at what Brazil develops, India develops, somewhere centrally.
And that's why we have global teams with these, Coca-Cola is our largest client. Unilever is one of our big clients as well. So we have global teams. So no piece of content can actually go out without global teams looking for consistency. But at the same time, media moves so fast today that something might happen in the world. This week, something happened in New York City. Timothy Chalamet had a lookalike contest. And one of our teams had an idea for our Verizon client. And if we don't do it in 3 days, that moment of the excitement is gone. So you also have to move so fast.
And your clients are ready to move fast as well?
Clients are moving extremely fast.
Okay.
Again, business is not perfect. Globality makes it even more complex. And scale, I always say, the co-pilot of scale is complexity. Right? If you want something really simple, it tends to be very small. Right. If you want something very big and to have impact and to scale and to be in multiple countries, it is going to be more complex. Right. That's life.
Okay. I have one more question, then I'll open it up to questions from the audience. We have mic runners somewhere, right? Okay. So the last thing I want to ask you is about the role of emerging markets in your overall strategy. Because in the advertising, I keep saying advertising, but I don't know what else to call it.
I don't know what to call it.
I don't know
right.
what to call it. But whatever you do,
Yeah.
The US is still half the total business or total industry. So unlike some other industries in which the demand has shifted substantially to other parts of the world, it hasn't happened in your industry. So what is the role of the emerging markets in your strategy? And for something like the Shah Rukh Khan ad, does that have any value for what you do in other parts of the world? How does a country like India or China fit into your strategy?
Our top market, I'm just trying to think like in terms of just hierarchy, top market, I'm not going to look at the US, but would be like an office perspective would be New York, second is London, third is China, fourth is the Middle East, fifth is India, sixth is Brazil.
Okay.
Right, so.
Headcount.
No, I'm talking about revenue.
Revenues.
I'm talking about revenues. Okay. So we actually have, but because
a big gap.
Because we are outside,
yeah.
Our specialty is our global footprint.
Okay.
Right, so we are unlike other agencies there. Post-COVID, what a lot of global agencies did is shrunk their footprint.
Okay.
We did not do that because, for 75 years, it has been our superpower has been our global footprint. Mm-hmm. So you won't see the same kind of dynamics in other. Our US business is actually a third of our business, so we're actually under index. But our European business and our Asian business are over indexed compared to the size of the market. Okay. And I'm good with that because that is what makes us special. I mean, yes, I would love my US business to be double the size because I want everything to be double the size.
So was that Shah Rukh Khan thing developed in India or in the US or?
No, that was developed in India for India. Cadbury's global platform is Generosity.
Okay.
They execute it in India differently. They will execute it. Actually, our teams are in London right now trying to figure out how to do
a version of this?
Not a version of this, but how to take Generosity, which is what Cadbury stands for.
Okay.
And what do you do with it in Europe?
Can't you can do the same thing with a Brazilian star.
You can absolutely do it, but if you don't do it right away, virality is one of those things. If something takes off, and then you try to replicate it later, it seems, because there is a spirit of innovation and newness and exciting, then it just becomes a Me Too, and it won't have the same disruptive power, won't have engagement from the audience to the level. I wish we could do that, but there is a, we're constantly trying,
Very short life.
Long life to Generosity as a platform, long life to Real Beauty. Coke is real magic, so that's why there are these platforms, but you have to be of the moment, in the moment.
Okay.
In the market.
Okay. All right. Terrific. Thank you. I think we've really got a sense of what you do and all of the challenges that you deal with. Any questions? Someone in front here. Could you get a mic? Hustle. Come on. Here, right in front.
Hello. Okay. Hi, Devika. Thank you so much for being here and just sharing your experiences. My name is Lisette, and my question is kind of when speaking about moving fast and taking the momentum of trends, how do you balance taking that initiative and moving fast while also creating something that's genuine and that resonates with the brand and that doesn't seem kind of disingenuine for a specific company that you're working with?
I mean, you're asking sort of the trillion-dollar question in some ways. That the way to do it is by what we call these consistent platforms. Cadbury stands for Generosity. So whatever you do in the moment has to have some angle to it that seems authentic to Generosity because they've done it for years. Coca-Cola is about real magic, and Dove is about the campaign for real beauty. So we spend a lot of time making sure that they're global, timeless, and we call them in our industry, platforms. So then you can be really timely because you have this timeless thing that the brand gets known for. So when you're getting a piece of content from a particular brand, it feels authentic. You feel like they have a right to be able to say that or do that. And I think when I say 95% of the content gets ignored is when that doesn't exist. And there's no authenticity to the brand. So that's just the world of stuff, things just being thrown at you, but nothing really sticks.
Thank you.
Jane?
Hi, my name is Jane, and my question is like, what characteristics do you pick for the brands that you work with?
We don't look at, I guess I'd be pretty clear to say, we're not going to work with gun manufacturers. We don't work with, a few things. We do not work with a cigarette company. It is largely determined, I will say, by the employee base. Because it's not like we have a factory. Obviously, I need human imagination to do what we do. And if the human imagination of that human being or that group, that community is dead against something, they will never be able to imagine a solution. So some things I think we're really consistent about from a global perspective because we're a global company. And other things we let local markets decide what that employee base feels comfortable and good with. It's never easy because in no cohort are you going to get 100% of people agreeing to go a certain way. But that's typically how we decide. On the flip side, I'll tell you, we are problem solvers. So we're not industry. We don't look at it through the lens of what is the industry or what do I want. We're problem solvers. So we actually want companies and businesses that have some problem to solve, that actually have something meaty that we can get our hands on, that creativity can solve. I know you're going to talk about how a supply chain can solve something, but it's how can we, from a creative perspective, solve that?
Yeah, in the back over there.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. So DeMoore McKim School of Business is at a very exciting inflection point itself, and we are also disrupting all sorts of things ourselves. How would you represent us?
How would
you represent us? Have you ever represented a higher ed institution?
That's super interesting. That's a great question. I'd represent you the little that I know, and I guess I'd go to a northeastern level as opposed to just the B school side of it. But I would represent Northeastern as thinkers and doers. I think your co-op program is, so it's the place that you come to think and do, not just like any other academic institution where you go really only to think. And I think that's I was trying to push my son, by the way, to come here, and he didn't. I think that's a real unique thing, because I think you learn from doing a lot more than you learn simply in the classroom. And the combination of the two, I think, is a massively powerful thing. Does that seem authentic? Was that an answer that you all felt was authentic?
Yeah, Manfei? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. If you already have the mic. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, Devika. So I'm an international graduate student from India. So listening to your story was really motivational. And so my question is, in this rapidly changing world, so for being a young professional, what kind of skills or qualities do you think is important to remain adaptable and resilient?
You use the word yourself. You need to be adaptable, right? And you need to be supremely curious. And I say this to... we've developed a new AI platform called Open, which is designed for marketing. It's based on an LLM, but we've trained this to do much more of the task orientation from a marketing perspective. And I tell everybody this to say, the biggest thing you need is to be curious and adaptable and to want to learn and to do, right? My advice to my son always is, and I said this in the beginning, he's always saying, well, I need to figure out, but mom, where do I want to end up? And I'm like, who the hell knows where we're all going to end? I don't know what's going to happen next week in the election. Who knows where we're going to end up? Right? So take what's ahead of you, learn that skill, whatever that is. You can have small skills, big skills, and just have an open mind. And the other thing is, I feel very sorry for all of you. You're all going to live till 110. That's what they say for your generation. And you're going to have 5 careers. Actually, I read something in the research that says 7 careers now. So just experiment. You don't have to solve for world hunger tomorrow morning. Experiment and do something. Did you guys listen to that speech? Do something. I think I answered your question very obtusely, but I hope that was helpful.
But I think in some other interview, you said you look for people who are interested and interesting.
Yes.
I thought it was a very nice way to sum it up. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Andy. Your global and domestic teams do a great job of staying ahead of the curve. How do you guys assess what is worth it when it comes to moving forward with ad campaigns and advertising in general?
Some of it's gut, but there are lots of testing mechanisms. This AI platform that I talked about in Open, I can actually feed it a piece of stimulus, whatever that stimulus is, and it can do a synthetic focus group. And at the press of a button, it'll tell me the positive sentiment, negative sentiment, how people, and we say find, fact, feel, like how do they find it? Give me some facts that they remembered from it, and how did they feel about it? But testing is an aid. You cannot predict that an innovation, a piece of content, you can't design for virality. It happens. I mean, you can hope for it and you can do the building blocks of it. So we have a lot of testing mechanisms, but again, we use them as a co-pilot of human judgment.
Yeah, Madhuri?
Hi. You talked a little bit about the masculine versus the feminine styles of leadership. I think it's quite a courageously distinct thing to say in today's world, but yet I completely agree with that being a prevalent factor, just from the perspective of human nature translating into our styles of leadership. And I would love for you to elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by feminine versus masculine leadership.
So let's talk about the codes of the business world, right? There are some real codes like you cannot be emotional at work. Don't wear your emotions on your sleeve. I always go, who the hell wrote that? 100 years ago, a man. Because men are not emotional beings, which is okay. We are emotional beings. So we should bring our emotions to our jobs because that's who we are, right? Never cry in the office. Never, ever. Sign of weakness. Because men have been taught that crying is a sign of weakness. I think men should cry. By the way, my son cries a lot, which is amazing. I love it. Not every day, but I love it. Why does the workplace think that you shouldn't cry in the workplace? Women tend to cry more. By the way, you know why we cry more? Because of those damn hormones. It's also physiologically something that we don't know how to control. Right? So, and that's what I mean to say feminine leadership is different to masculine leadership. And I think we need, if the workplace is changing, the codes need to change. So those are two tangible examples of it. But what I tend to do is I will look in a room and there was this, one of my colleagues, she's a woman, she worked for me for many years and I'm so happy she's coming back to work for me now in January. But she was having a really bad meeting and I could tell she was feeling, and she walked out of the meeting and she was running to the bathroom and I knew she wanted to go and cry. I knew she wanted to have a good old ball, right? Feels so good. And I caught her and I took her into my office. One of the things I have is my office does not have any doors and does not have a desk, and I will talk about that in a minute. And I got her team there and I said, Linz is having a really bad moment. She hates when I tell this story. Linz is having a really bad moment and she wants to cry. And she started crying and her team started crying because they were all exhausted. They had a really good cry. We laughed, they went out, life was great. Right? Then take the desk. Go to Google right now. Who has their phone? And you do office, and then you go to images. You're going to get a white man with his feet on his desk. Lots of those images. The desk is a symbol of power. I will sit behind the desk as a leader, and you sit on the other side. So I was like, I don't want a desk. I don't have a desk. I have only furniture where everybody sits at the same level. To me, those are symbols of how I want to lead as a woman versus the symbols that have been defined in the workplace. And by the way, there's no, like, I don't sit here and I go, oh my God, why does that exist? It exists because those are the people who were in, you always design something for yourselves. So it wasn't sinister or bad. There were 100% of people in the office used to be men, so the environment was created for men. One of the other things I talk about all the time in the workplace and in groups like this is menstruation, menopause. How are we designing workplaces? The first thing you got to do is talk about it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Can I ask a little follow-up if we have
Sure.
time? Do you think that there is such a thing as a leadership style and firm fit in terms of the people that are currently working at your firm and the direction in which you need your firm to head in, as well as the industry that it's in, and then the masculine versus feminine style of leadership that you choose?
My style of leadership is what I would call servant leadership. And it's really important to understand, when I say how I grew up constantly needing, be the best daughter, very Indian codes. I was never Devika, everybody calls me Dev here, by the way, I was never that, right? I was a daughter, an older sister to my younger sister, but a younger sister to my older brother. So and by the way, for any of you who are Indian here, you'll understand it. Every one of those relationships has a different code, has different symbols, has a different way of behaving, and I resented that. I always say, I didn't come to the US for a better life. I come from a very decent family of means in India, but there was the burden of privilege. I wanted to break out and I wanted to be me. Right? So what I tend to do from a leadership standpoint is understand the people I'm leading and spend a lot of time understanding them, because I don't want them to be like me. I don't want a defined style of, your style of leadership. For you to be most effective, frankly, has to be your own style of doing something. For you to be the most effective. So this is not, oh my God, Dev, so kumbaya. I'm a shrewd businesswoman. I want to get the best out of people because I want to be the best in what we're doing. And people cannot be their best when I impose myself on them. In the modern workplace, we would call that empathy, which is another word I do not like because it's become a buzzword and nobody can. Empathy is, please understand people. I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. Understand human beings. Sorry, I know I talk in a not a very corporate way.
We make time for maybe Valentina. Can you, Professor Valentina? Valentina, you have a question? Oh, go ahead.
Hi, my question is regarding leadership. So as the global business advances, how do you think leadership will need to change in order to lead their teams in these global environments?
It sort of goes back to what I was saying at the individual level. So if I travel all over the world to different markets, I have to understand local culture. Now, by the way, my own experience living as an immigrant in a different country has been, or my life's work has been to understand my host country so that I can fit in, as opposed to me sitting here going, I'm here, come on, everybody. You have to do the work. So it is the same thing that I have to go into our offices and understand that culture. By the way, it is a business imperative for us. Because if I don't understand the difference between Spanish culture, Portuguese culture, Chinese culture, Australian culture, US culture, our work will not be effective for our clients. So in our business, to be students of the culture, just notice I'm not using the word consumers. You will have some of the leaders who will come here and talk to you about understanding the consumer base. Our lens is very different. We have to understand the cultural base because we are trying to create stimulus, creative stimulus, storytelling to get a response. Right? I'm not trying to actually sell you. The response is you buying something. So it's a very different dynamic. So you will hear us talk in our industry a lot more about sort of the cultural sensitivity, the cultural nuances versus the consumer base, because that's how we reach the consumer base.
We have about a minute left, and I'm sorry, we're going to have to hold the rest of the questions, but the good news is Devika is going to stay through the panel discussion and for the reception. So you'll have opportunities. Feel free to walk up. And if you want to take selfies, do it fast. Okay. So Devika, any final thoughts before we conclude?
Look, in some ways, I would just want to say it's never been a harder time to be your generation, given what's happening in the world. And it's never been a better time to be your generation because you have so many tools. So my biggest advice to you is this. if you can control something, don't stress about it. And if you can't control something, don't stress about it. Right? It's as simple. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.